It was a quiet evening on the coast, and the soft rustling of the wind in the trees promised a peaceful vacation. My family had invited my sister and me to spend a week in a cottage by the sea. I reluctantly agreed, realizing that it meant an extended stay with my parents, which was often stressful. The only saving grace was that my sister, Jenny, had already confirmed she was going, and I hadn't seen her for quite some time. Since we'd gone our separate ways, she went to university, and I quit my job. We hadn't kept in close contact. Calling her meant going to her mother, which always discouraged me. But here, lying on the warm sand with my eyes closed, I had to admit that this wasn't such a bad place after all. The sun was pleasantly burning my skin, which was a welcome change after being indoors so often. I had already thrown off my shirt and shoes and was thinking about taking a swim before lunch when the calm was broken by an explosion of swearing, with the voice unmistakably belonging to my sister. "Damn rock," she grumbled, plopping down next to me on the sand. "There's only one rock on the whole beach, and I had to step on it." "Maybe you should have worn shoes," I reply, still not opening my eyes. "It's the beach, buddy. Who expects the beach to have rocks?" She brought her foot up to my face, showing me the spot where she'd hurt herself. "You think it's broken?" I threw her a brief glance. "No, you'll survive. You have strong girl legs." She scoffed, but the playful chuckle reminded me of how much I missed being with her. Despite the distance, it was nice to realize that some things hadn't changed. Jenny, on the other hand, had changed, and physically. It struck me that it had been almost 2 years since I'd last seen her, and now she looked more like a woman than the sister I remembered. As we chatted, she asked about Rachel, my ex-girlfriend. I hadn't told anyone about our breakup yet, not even my mother, because I knew she would immediately try to set me up with someone else. "Oh, I didn't know," Jenny said, looking a little apologetic when I told her about Rachel. "It's okay," I reply. "We weren't meant to be together." "Well, don't worry. You'll find a nice girl soon." We continued to chat, and eventually Jenny decided to go in the water. She stood up and pulled off her t-shirt, revealing a blue bikini that left little to the imagination. I raised an eyebrow. "Jesus, Jen, do you have a proper swimsuit?" "Shut up." "It's fine," she replied dismissively. I couldn't help but watch her walk toward the water, her body moving gracefully in the sunlight. A wave of guilt swept over me. This was my sister. I quickly stood up and joined her, diving into the water to distract myself from the unwelcome thoughts. The water was cool and refreshing, helping to clear my head. Jenny swam up to me, her hair slicked back, and she smiled as she looked at the sun glistening on the surface of the ocean. "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked, looking pleased. "Yes, wonderful," I murmur, trying to maintain eye contact and not linger on the way the water lapped against her curves. She smiled teasingly, as if she'd read my mind. It was unsettling how close we were, physically, but emotionally, I was distraught. I tried to distract myself and swim away, but she followed me, playfully splashing me. That night, I lay sleepless in bed, thoughts of Jenny swirling around in my head. It wasn't right. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease knowing how my view of her had changed in just a few short hours. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up and walked over to her room, feeling an inexplicable urge to see her again. The door creaked open, as I quietly opened it and whispered her name. "Jenny, are you awake?" She didn't answer, lying motionless under the sheets. I hesitated, knowing it was wrong to be in her room in this state, but the desire to be near her overrode common sense. I crept closer, watching the soft rise and fall of her breathing. Suddenly, she stirred. "Can't sleep either?" she asked in a barely audible whisper. I froze. She had been awake the whole time. "Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to wake you up," I stammered out, not knowing what to do now that the moment had arrived. "You didn't mean to." "I've been awake for a while now," she admitted, turning slightly to face me. "I wondered if you were coming." We both sat in silence, tension hovering in the air. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting soft shadows across the room. I could feel my heart pounding, not knowing what was going to happen next. Suddenly, there was a loud, creaking sound outside the door, as if someone was approaching. My heart raced, and I quickly moved away from the bed, trying to act casual. The doorknob creaked, and we both froze. Was that our parents? Had they heard us? But after a few tense moments, the sound died down. We exchanged glances, and an unspoken fear of being caught hung between us. "I think we should be more careful," Jenny whispered, concern audible in her voice. "This is getting out of hand." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. But the tension of the night, the fear of being caught, and the confusion of emotions were swirling in my mind. What had started out as a simple vacation had quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. The following days were filled with tension. Every look, every word we exchanged seemed to be filled with meaning. At one point, while walking along the beach, Jenny confessed to having feelings she couldn't fully explain. "I don't know what's going on," she said, looking out at the horizon. "I've never felt like this before, and it scares me." "It scares me too," I admitted. "But we need to figure it out before we do something we'll regret later." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. But before either of us could say anything else, we heard footsteps behind us. We quickly dispersed, pretending that nothing had happened, when suddenly a figure appeared in the distance. It was our parents. They had returned from town earlier than expected, and it was clear from the look on their faces that they had noticed the strange dynamic between us. A tense and palpable atmosphere hung in the air. What started out as a simple celebration had turned into a game of hidden emotions and secrets. There was no escaping the tension now. We were trapped in our own actions, with no clear way forward. The week wasn't over yet, but something told me that nothing would ever be the same again.